right real estate professional can be challenging. I'm broker Melissa Wilson. I'm knowledgeable in all aspects of the real estate process. So whether you're looking to buy new or an existing home or have a commercial need, I'm here to help.
Make sure you pick up my 2 books that's in Amazon right now. The first one is Passive-Aggressive Racism and the System of White Supremacy. And I talk about in that particular book how the system of white supremacy really runs on our daily lives here in America. In our latest book, 7 Steps to Decolonize the Mind, we go through those steps to try to deprogram you from the system of white supremacy. Make sure you can pick up those books on Amazon.com.
Introducing the African Diaspora News Channel app, your gateway to stories that's overlooked by the corporate mainstream media.
At African Diaspora News Channel, we cover stories that don't receive mainstream attention, and we serve as the voice to the global Black community. We are committed to informing and educating through the power of media, connecting the African diaspora one story at a time.
With our platform, we're helping to end injustice by exposing it.
Join us in standing for excellence in journalism and serving our community. Download the African Diaspora News app today.
Sister Vicki, you're live on African Diaspora News Channel.
Awesome. Peace, family. Thank you so much for tuning in to African Diaspora News Channel. We're so pleased that you are with us today. As you come in, family, would you be sure to give us a big thumbs up, and share the broadcast? When you do that, family, you make it more likely that other folks will know that we're here. And how many of you all know how important it is for other folks to know that alternative grassroots voices who represent your interests are on? So thank you so very much, family. Now, I have a very, very interesting story to talk to you about today. And this particular story is not unusual for me at all because I have discussed this for a few years now. Yes, I have discussed this topic for a few years. Watch this. So there is a Caucasian lady by the name of Jane Elliot. She is respected amongst many Black folks, many Black churches, many Black spiritual groups and organizations, fraternities, sororities, colleges, universities, HBCUs, family. For those of you that don't know, HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. So this white lady has a major open door in Black society and some of our most important and prestigious platforms and organizations and spheres of influence. Yes. So they bring in this Jane Elliot to lecture, to speak. Now, I don't know if some of you all remember or not, but she really first came on the scene many, many years ago, decades ago, in fact. Oprah Winfrey, believe it or not, Oprah Winfrey was one of the first ones that caused Jane Elliot to reach to receive acclaim on behalf of Black folks, because Oprah Winfrey brought Jane Elliot on her broadcast many, many years ago to discuss anti-Black racism from white society. But what made Jane Elliot so interesting is not often that you see members from the dominant society expose their own in great detail. And so Oprah brought her on to talk to her own people and to explain this issue and some of her social and sort of psychological and counseling that she gives to her own people about the absolute tragedy of their racism. So she received acclaim on major networks, major platforms, and colleges, Black colleges and universities, right? Black media outlets as well. There's another white man in recent years, more recent years, I should say, named Tim Wise. Our people bring folks like him in as well, a white man to speak on behalf of anti-Black racism, right? But let me tell you something. There's always a test, and this is the problem that I had with her. When you listen to it, we cheer because not too many people that's a part of the dominant society admit their anti-Black behavior, right? They don't admit the oppression that they're responsible for, like folks like Jane Elliot. So we cheered them on. We said, let's bring her on. This is absolutely amazing. Maybe this will influence them. And isn't this wonderful? And let's sit her up here and let's help pay her mortgage and her rent, her bill. Let's send her children through to college and universities by us giving her these honorariums and open doors and help to sell her programs and lectures and stuff that's connected to these folks. Watch this. But here is the test. Before I tell you, I want you to see a recent clip of a panel, a so-called really academic and expert panel family that was on one of Roland Martin shows. Now, I want you to listen to mostly the audio here, and we'll be right back because I want to break down to you something. They bring on this Jane Elliot. I've been calling her out for years and how I have such a problem with her. And I'm going to explain to you after we play this clip the exact problem that I have with this so-called anti-Black racism advocate. Watch this.
Sister Elliott, we know that white and Black are not real in biology. And we also know that, of course, they exist as social forces and as a kind of racial contract. I wonder if you have any thoughts about reparations in this sense. We know in California, some of the folks who are saying, of course, the Supreme Court would not recognize race as a protected class that would allow people to get reparations based on their racial identity. That's their colorblind constitutionalism. We know that. But we also, so if lineage, if tracing back to enslavement would qualify people who were descended from people who were enslaved in the United States, if that were able to survive legal challenge, and I don't think it will because they'll use it as a proxy for race, but let's say it did, should white people proving Black ancestry, which is a form, I guess, of embracing their Black identity, right? Should white people proving Black ancestry be eligible for reparations?
If they're promised reparation, they'll go back and they'll choose that Black ancestry immediately. That's all you have to do to mess the whole situation up, is tell white people that they have Black ancestry and they are entitled to reparations. If you're gonna really mess yourself up if you do that. Think about that for a very long time before you do it. However, if you're going to give reparations to people who really deserve it, let's give it to the people who had this land before white folks came and stole it from them. Let's give reparations to the First Nations people who also came from Africa and were here long before slavery started, coming from Africa as being brought here by white people who didn't want to work but brought people here to work and so they wouldn't have to. Let's talk about reparations to the First Nations people, shall we?
I agree, but I mean, okay, that's interesting because I do think that. Ma'am.
Let's give the land back to the people who were here first, and they came from Africa, but we called them red men. We called them red people because we didn't know any better, and we didn't want to admit that they were here long before any people from Europe got here. We think that Columbus discovered America. Thor Heyerdahl said you can't discover a place where people are already living. They discovered it before you got there. This land was discovered long, long before Columbus was a gleam in his father's eye. But you see, we don't tell the truth in history, and we work really hard at deciding what is and is not true based on what white males say should be regarded as truth. That's scary to me, that we are still listening to white males tell us what is and what is not true.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I agree with you on reparations. People, the people who think that lineage won't be used as a proxy for race don't really understand how the American legal system works today. It will absolutely be used as a proxy for race.
Okay, family. Okay. Did you hear that blasphemy? Family, did you hear that blasphemy? Did you hear this undermining sabotage session that was conducted by your prestigious members of the Boule class? The man that's talking is Dr. Carr. This is supposed to be a professor, a lecturer, an educator in colleges and universities with our young black minds. This is the mouthpiece that's influencing supposedly our next bunch of world leaders and influencers. This black looking panel. Did you hear what I said? I said this black looking panel brings on this white woman who's an anti-black advocate. She is not an attorney. Why are they sitting here talking to this woman who chit-chats about her people and racism, asking her about whether or not if white folks can show that they have some black in them, that they should be also have a claim to reparations? And then he knows that we've made the legal distinction of pushing for lineage-based reparations, even though we use the word black in our colloquial conversation. When we're talking legally, we often use the term, we're pushing for lineage-based reparations, family, because they come up with all types of codifications, rules, regulations, and policies that are against you receiving compensation in multiple legal forms in different jurisdictions if you claim race. So we push for lineage-based reparations. Now, did Dr. Carr bring on the black attorneys and the other members of the team who are experts in this, who were successful in pushing forward, for example, the bills that would have made it and passed in California, but the Democrat leadership there sabotaged it because the white governor was afraid, threatened them based on information and belief in the stuff that we were told by some of the folks on the ground and people that do the work there in California. There are actual black attorneys and professionals, family, that are guiding us legally with what we need to do in court. Jane Elliot is not a legal professional, and she is not in the reparations circle to be an expert and an authority on speaking on such things. So why in the world are your black educators, your black boule funny looking educators talking to this white woman about whether or not if white folks can show that they've got some black ancestry in them, that they'll have a claim to reparations? We already have the stipulations or qualifications through our own committee set up. So why isn't Dr. Carr talking to such professionals? Because he's willing to sabotage it. This is diabolical what he's doing. That's number one. And our groups that are set up to discuss how one would qualify and prove that, we know what to do as it relates to you being able to prove that there was actual harm. So in addition to the other stipulations and qualifications that you must have, we have a great basis for being able to accurately prove that you are entitled. That's the purpose of going through the proper process so that you'll have approval. We don't need this pontification out there from black looking saboteurs such as Dr. Carr and the rest of that funny looking committee on the Roland Martin Show. This is what we're talking about. Now, I want to remind some of you of this before I get on this Jane Elliot lady. I started coming for Roland Martin years ago in some of my other, I was on other multiple networks and stuff and other platforms. I've been dealing with Roland for years and not just quote unquote name calling. I treat Roland like a true adversary to black society because he is responsible for undermining a lot of stuff that we've done. He is responsible for working behind the scenes against political and legislative adversaries of Black folks so that he can get him a few bones and biscuits so that he can benefit himself individually and throw us under the bus. How many of you all know that I have done broadcasts exposing the fact that you all know that Roland Martin's name came up during the WikiLeaks unveiling? How many of you all knew that? How many of you all know that Roland Martin, attention was brought onto him because of some of the emails, Hillary Clinton's emails that were leaked, and some of her associates and diplomats? How many of y'all remember hearing about the WikiLeaks exposure? A lot of folks didn't realize this, but I did back-to-back broadcasts on the fact that Roland was working for CNN for a long time, and they don't even want his funny-looking self back. He worked also for a Black network, and for whatever reason, they're not apparently, he's not back on there. I won't say whether or not he was officially fired or not. I'm going to leave that alone. Just know he's not on there anymore. Or CNN. Now, during the WikiLeaks release and leaks, Roland's name made it in mainstream media. Did you all know that even Roland's former colleagues at CNN were upset with him and credibly accused him, and notice the word I'm using, accused him, including Jake Tapper, who is totally, who's anti-Black in a lot of ways, arguably. Even Jake Tapper exposed Roland for a long time for secretly working behind the scenes with Hillary Clinton to give Hillary Clinton information prior to a debate. And that brought in one of the former chairpersons or co-chairpersons. How many of y'all remember Donna Brazile? She was a Black lady that's considered to be a Democratic and specifically a DNC darling. She held a high-level position in the DNC at one time. She's a strategist, and believe it or not, she knows what she's doing. She was effective in helping Al Gore. And how many of you all know that Al Gore was really on the way to win the White House before George Bush and him committed fraud, and the Republican Party committed fraud? We proved that in no limited time. So she knew how to strategize. She worked on his campaign. I'm just giving you a little background. Well, Donna Brazile ended up also working for CNN. How many of y'all remember when CNN let her go? How many of y'all knew that she didn't snitch on how she ended up also being connected to getting direct information, behind the scenes questions and stuff for Hillary Clinton? Well, Roland's name was brought into that. Now, when Roland was initially asked about it, y'all listen, he denied. And I'm a responsible media person, so he initially denied it. But guess what? When he found out that some of the researchers and investigative journalists had emails, Roland changed his tune. Let me hit the gavel, y'all. The Vicki Show is a home of the hand claps and the gavel raps. When I started going after Roland years ago, do you know Roland was doing many broadcasts, cussing out Black folks, calling us out our names. And then sometime after I started going after him, do you all know that he did a broadcast? I can't even say the word because I'm not going to speak that language over here on this platform. But Roland did a broadcast on major social media platforms, and in the title, he referred to Black folks as simple Simon MFers because we wanted reparations and because we disagreed with him politically. Did you all know that? Roland was always hostile to us demanding reparations. I'm talking about from years back. And in his literal title, he put in the title of his broadcast, in part, calling us simple Simon MFers because we wanted reparations, in part. And then he actually said the words on these major social media platforms. So Roland brought in Jane Elliot years ago. He did an interview with her on a big platform. And then Roland, this is his show with his guest, bringing in this white woman that once again is undermining our righteous demands for reparations. So if you all are wondering why we don't have it, that's why. How many of you all know that when Barack Obama was in office, they controlled the House, They controlled the Senate, and they certainly had the White House, which means that if the Democrats control both the House, the Senate, and the White House, that means that it didn't matter if not one Republican was for reparations. All the Democrats had to do was use that period of time, that window of time, that auspicious window of time to pass that legislation. Instead, he used that power to make sure that he pushed for Obamacare, which was fine. I'm not tripping on that. But still, millions of Americans still don't have coverage. But he did what no other previous administration did on that. He pushed and advocated for favorable LGBTQ laws that end up passing under his administration that never even passed under the previous Republican or Democrat administrations. Do you all know that even former Democrat president administrations such as Bill Clinton, how many of y'all remember years and years ago, there was a little phrase that was called "don't ask, don't tell"? I got to help some of y'all understand how this works. Even Bill Clinton refused to give that community all of what they wanted. He came up with a compromise in the military for those that were a part of the LGBTQ and said, don't even ask and don't even tell. Obama, he used his political power. He used his political pulpit, bully pulpit, and he wielded all of his influence to push through laws, controversial laws that nobody thought would ever pass. So when you all sit up here and tell us something about reparations, we don't want to hear it because you did not use the power and authority that you had when you had it to do it. And don't forget, when Joe Biden, when he first took office, remember they controlled the House, remember? They controlled the Senate, remember? And they controlled the White House. Did they use that first window of time to push through reparations for their top constituency after Joe Biden won? And remember, that race was tight. What did Joe Biden tell black folks? How many of y'all remember what Joe Biden told black folks 4 years ago after we made sure that he got in office? He said, you had my back, I'm going to have your back. Did he have our back, family? No. And this is one of the things I want to remind you of. But now let me get to my other point here. Watch this. Jane Elliot. I've been calling her out for years. I want us to get ready to queue up one of the clips that I did I did clips on her years ago. I did one, I think, a year or two ago. I do back to back. I don't care what the news is saying. If I feel like there's a major topic that we are not talking enough about, family, yes, it's important that we get views. All of that is important, but we're trying to affect our people. Yes, we're trying to affect our culture, our country. I want y'all to get ready to watch 2 brief clips which is proof and receipts that I've been giving Jane Elliot this everlasting word. And we're going to talk a little more about my problems with her when this white woman who's supposed to be so pro-black, so anti-white racism. But when you start to hold white folks accountable and say, how should we hold white folks accountable for what they did? Watch what they say. Watch a couple of the clips of me back in the day going off on them about this. Watch this. And this is why I'm saying this woman is a fraud. And I'm going to tell you one reason in particular that I can't stand her. Because she disrespected the philosophy of a black woman that was shunned by black folks. The very people that paid her to come into these colleges and universities and schools and churches. You guys wouldn't give Dr. Frances Cress Welsing the time of day. And Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was an academic. But you guys were upset because you didn't like how she used her intelligence. So after listening to some of you all, just like some of y'all love this white man named Tim Wise because he's always out there talking about white people being racist and all this kind of stuff. But it's the same test. When you asked him about what you're supposed to do to repair it, these very seemingly anti-racist white folks that's going around here making a whole lot of money saying these things, when it comes down to saying, what do we do to hold white people accountable? What do we do to even the playing fields? What do we do to restore black folks? Since you white people, Jane Elliot, go out there and tell the world how horrible your people have been to us. And how terrible it is for them to keep this up. What do you propose to do in terms of accountabilities? That's the test. And in each test, whether it's Tim Wise or Jane Elliot, they give us the big, fat middle finger. So here you are, excited that these white folks are out there talking about racism is wrong. You say white people never admit it like this. So let's bring them on and pay all their bills. Let's act like what they're saying is so profound. Let's cause them to have books and essays and speaking engagements and stuff like that. Let's put that all together for the handful of white people that's willing to admit that racism is bad. Okay, family. Okay. Now, do you see those clips? I've been dealing with this woman for years, and even during recent history of the past year or so, I've been discussing Jane Elliot because reparations are very important, and our people continue to bring on this lady who appears ostensibly on the outside to be a partner and an ally for Black folks. But when you ask Jane Elliot what should be done about it, when they asked her about reparations for Black folks, what did she say, family? When she deflected the question about if white folks are able to prove ancestry with Black folks enslaved, what did she deflect? She didn't even say that Black folks deserve reparations. What did she say? She said that we need to give the folks that's most deserving, the people that own this land, the Indians, reparations. I am totally offended by that. That is absolutely blasphemous and diabolical. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I was born and raised in Mississippi in a Baptist church, so I know all about Christianity and all this other kind of stuff. I'm a spiritual teacher. But let me tell you all something. There are invisible forces behind our politics. There are invisible forces that were involved in both the Trump administration as the Trump presidential campaign, as well as Kamala Harris campaign. There are diabolical forces that are against us getting what we deserve in this country. And they emanate not only from this state side, but also from foreign countries. I won't talk about that kind of stuff here, but pin below in the comment section, you'll see shortly a link to my upcoming free webinar on Sunday, November 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern, where I'm going to be breaking down the occult dark energies that was used in both Trump's campaign and Kamala Harris's campaign, and why the spiritual warfare was so palatable, why it was so, you could almost feel the contrary in battle forces. I'm going to break down the occult forces behind it, and I'm going to give you the accurate interpretation of the prophecy about the dry bones army rising up. It's absolutely free. There are things that I cannot talk about online. It is so sacred. It is so specific, and it calls out the hidden hand. So I have to talk about this kind of stuff offline. So make sure that you click the link below to save your seat. Make sure that you mark your calendar so that you do not miss it. I'm going to be telling you stuff that nobody else will tell you during this time. You can just consider this to be a digital war room session. I'm bringing that up because I want you all to understand that there are forces that's also working with these very voices that you just heard, buying through Jane Elliot, buying through these other social media platforms and other media platforms that pretend to be pro-Black. She wouldn't even give credence to Black folks. Now, when I brought up the religion a minute ago, some of you all will get offended. Some of you all, I was raised this way too, to honor and worship white images of a man that we call Jesus Christ. Blue eyes, stringy head images that we would see pale face all over the place. And we would talk about a man who died on the cross, we said in Calvary, now somewhere over there in Palestine in the Middle East area region, who died on the cross, yes, who was crucified. But we don't think about the number of Calvaries that took place with our direct Black ancestry here in the United States. Did you hear what I said right there? Baby, there are Calvaries all throughout this country where some of our mothers and our fathers were strung up on trees and their bodies were not kept intact. You will forgive me for being emotional about this. I won't say the exact words, but you know what I'm talking about. Their bodies were sexually assaulted. Both our mothers and fathers. Their bodies were dismembered. They were castrated. Some of the members of the other side, do you know they ingested some of our ancestors' body parts? Do you know that some of the white clergy conducted these crucifixions, these lynchings on Sundays? A lot of them did. When you see images, do you wonder why so many white folks were dressed up and why they were conducted by clergy? Because they were doing Christian rituals, family. Some of y'all don't know that. They were reenacting what they believe to be a Moses ritual. And when we talk about the term barbecue, I wasn't even supposed to be talking about all of what I'm talking about now. When we talk about the term barbecue, barbecue was not just a taste of a sauce that goes on meat. Barbecue was a type of slow burning. They were reenacting what they read in scripture when they used the black bodies. Do you wonder why they would put those very images on postcards back in the day? Do you know when you used to enter white grocery stores, white places of businesses, they would have body parts and so forth as treasure sitting in there? When the lynchings were over, do you know that they used to fight and spend money over certain black body parts? You're talking about a man that you never met from 2,000 years ago, but your auntie, your mamas, your daddies, your uncles, your sons, your daughters, by extension. And your backyards were strung up on trees. And you want me to believe that if I remember them, if I honor them, that that's somehow demonic. What is wrong with you? Do you not understand that that's a level of spiritual warfare? Every day in America, they got us sitting here honoring their ancestors when we have to go to their museums, when we have to look at their statues. Talk black to me, somebody. Some of you all don't understand the diabolical forces and the true dark magic that's being done, even when you exchange your dollars. You ain't ready for that. You got to sign up for my free webinar where I'm going to be exposing these dark occult forces. Sunday, November 24, click the link below. Pinned in the comments. Watch this, or will be pinned after the end of this broadcast. And make sure you share the broadcast, by the way, family. What do I want to say in the next couple of minutes here about this Miss Jane Elliot and your black boule bringing her on to sit here and sabotage and to undermine reparations for our people? I brought that up specifically about what our ancestors dealt with because some of you all think that because you make 6 figures, some of you think that because you got 7 figures, some of you think that because you can pay your mortgage, you can put your kids through school. Well, I don't need a handout. I don't need reparations. Are you out of your mind? Reparations is not a handout. The stuff that I just said that they did to your mothers and fathers, that alone means that we should make the demand. Your ancestors will be ashamed of you. All of what they went through for you, and then to hear you sit up here and say, we don't need reparations. And they shed blood for this country. We fought in all their wars. Even when we were in chains, do you all know that Foundation of Black Americans fought in all the wars with the hopes that we would one day be free? That there would be some benefit? Let me tell y'all something. I'm reading from this book here. I didn't even give the producers the book information here, but this book is called How White Folks Got So Rich. The Nation of Islam put this book out. I always quote from this book. Even when I did my speech, my reparation speech, how many of y'all saw my reparation speech that I did with our brother Tariq Nasheed and some of other powerful speakers this summer in Washington, D.C. when I spoke to thousands of folks in a plaza there just down the road from the White House. I quoted from this book, and I always do broadcasts, and I speak about this book and many other books. I'm going to make some quick references here because I need some of you all to understand this. The name of the book is How White Folks Got So Rich. The reason why I let you know this is because white folks got so rich because they got handouts and welfare. They got so rich because not only because of chattel slavery, are y'all hearing me today? But because even after, during that time, and even after that time, and even into modern history, their incentives for their white supremacy and their anti-blackness was codified in law, baby. Watch this. In the book, and I want to read you this quote here, which is so interesting, and I need you all to understand why we are pushing for reparations the way that we do. Yes, give me a few minutes, okay, family? On page 10, it makes it clear. The fact is that since the end of legalized slavery, whites have cunningly employed every mechanism of government, listen, religion, and private enterprise specifically to hamstring Black prospects for success, and some of America's institutionalized injustices were devilishly ingenious. All sectors, listen close, all sectors of American society harmonized to institute a series of affirmative action initiatives that gave white people exclusive material advantages, and none have anything whatever to do with merit or hard work. By gangster force, it says on page 11, and wily deception, whites aggressively sabotaged Black advancement. They employed domestic terrorism in the form of lynching and mob violence while simultaneously, listen, and this is the part most of you miss, while simultaneously crafting policies and laws to gift themselves with a vast assortment of privileges, preferences, incentives, subsidies, tax breaks, grants, awards, discounts, exemptions, credits, quotas, deductions, and countless other benefits, hoarding the nation's vast resources along strictly racial lines. Even Dr. Martin Luther King, how many of y'all know we love to quote Dr. Martin Luther King? And y'all love to talk about how he was nonviolent, how he believed in us using the vote, how he believed in pushing for civil rights and voting rights. But most of you all forget, and I want to emphasize this to our family also around the world because you must know this. How many of you all know that after all that, did you all know that Dr. King is on record as saying that he feared that he was integrating his people into a burning house? In other words, he used that analogy, that phrase to express regret for pushing civil rights, voting rights, because he realized that that was only superficial stuff. Dr. King, before he left the planet, before the United States of America deleted him, before they unalived our hero like they did so many of our other ones, do you all know he started demanding reparations? Do you all know that he specifically demanded tangibles from the United States government? Do you all know that when they did the March on Washington, what did Dr. King say while they were going? How come y'all don't play this all the time? They love to play the part of a speech talking about when black men can hold hands with black men and little white children and little black children, we can get together and hold hands. No, he said we going there to do what? To get our check. Somebody say in the chat, cut the check. I can't even see the chat, but I'm telling y'all in the chat to cut the check. Your favorite, Dr. Martin Luther King, before he got out of here, started saying, that's cute, the little civil rights stuff. He said, that's cute, the little voting rights stuff. He said, no, baby, cut us our check. But that's not all that Dr. King said. Guess what else Dr. King said? It was Dr. King that was on record that said how the United States of America gave white folks a whole lot of thousands and thousands of acres of land. It was Dr. King that exposed America for her pioneering of the Great West and how we brought over immigrant white Europeans from all over the world so that they could migrate to the United States, colonize the United States so that black folks wouldn't be able to do it. He went so far as exposing the fact that the United States government understood that it was black folks that were the agrarian or farming or land geniuses. How many of y'all know that we were agricultural geniuses? That's why we worked the land. Dr. King called out America, said that they knew that their new white folks couldn't get the work done. So what did America do? He exposed the United States government for creating colleges for white folks to go learn how to work the land. Dr. King said, y'all not only gave them the land, he said, you taught them how to work the land. He said, then you turn around and you gave them low-cost grants and loans so that they could buy the equipment that they needed for the land, to mechanize the land. Dr. King exploded on the United States of America. Why am I bringing that up? We need nobody telling us we don't deserve reparations. We don't want nobody telling us it's a handout. We built this, baby. Everybody be sure to hit that thumbs up button, share this broadcast. Watch this. Watch this. And I'm going to give y'all a big twist. Watch this. Miss Jane Elliot. She disgusts me. This is how you know you're listening to a fraud and why I called her that. Because y'all are shout and jump all day when white folks sit there and agree that they were racist, and they are racist. Y'all will sit there and shout all day when you hear a white woman call out her own people. Who cares if their rhetoric admits that they have racial problems? But when you ask them what should be done about it, when you ask them about accountability mechanisms, when you ask them about making the playing field even, because you admit that they screwed us over, what does your favorite white advocate say, Jane Elliot? She disrespects us. And she feels we shouldn't be getting reparations. And she deflects and says that the Indians ought to get reparations. Well, first of all, let me check her before I get off of this channel. I'm about to go. Miss Elliot, first of all, ma'am, do you understand? Because she noticed that she used the word, how they call them red Indians, right? Well, ma'am, do you understand that we're the original people and that we populated the entire planet? Do you all know that some of the ones that are technically foundational Black Americans are not only our Black families that were brought from the continent of Africa, but they include the actual original Aboriginal Black-skinned natives to this land? Talk Black to me, somebody, Miss Jane Elliot. But not only that, y'all know I don't just scream and bam a gavel. I know people be like, Vicki, my people tell me something. They say, Vicki, you go straight to college with us. Yes, baby, don't play with it. That's why they scared of me. Yes, I'm passionate, but I always have receipts and I always have the historical background and I always have spirit back in my words. Here's another book. I didn't even tell the team that I was going to quote from this book. Real quick. One of our modern heroes who's an octogenarian, who's still alive today, a living legend, the great Dr. Claude Anderson. The great Dr. Claude Anderson, who was appointed to work in the presidential administration of Jimmy Carter. How many of y'all know that about Dr. Claude Anderson? Dr. Claude Anderson, who is an economist and authority, wrote multiple books. Dr. Claude Anderson, who pushes reparations. Dr. Claude Anderson, who spent thousands of dollars of his own money to sue for a form of reparations for Black folks. Watch this, Jane Elliot. Sit down, Jane, and get your lesson from Vicki Dillard today. Guess what Dr. Claude Anderson teaches us? That there were provisions in some of the Indian treaties for Black formerly enslaved. Miss Jane Elliot, did you know that while you're deflecting to natives getting it? So natives already got a form of reparations, ma'am. I said, Miss Jane Elliot, and you all know she knows this. That's why they call reservations. Reservations is land. The stuff that we worked, the stuff that we was promised at 40 acres and a mule that all of us didn't get, the stuff that we gave white America to come work, that's what you gave, what you all call now the Red Indians. What are you talking about, ma'am? And to this day, we continue to give them allocations of actual money in cash. What's wrong with you, ma'am? Do you all see how twisted the thinking of our so-called allies are? But that's not all. That's not all, beloved. I'm going to make this quote and I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all for your patience. Again, my name is Vicki Dillard. I'm tuned in to you from the great state of Colorado, but I was born and raised in Mississippi, but I live in the wild, wild west. I'm here on this amazing platform with our founder that I founded by the great great Mr. Look, I almost call him Doctor. The great Mr. Phil Scott of the African Diaspora News Channel family and network, who has multiple platforms. Family, he's doing a great work to get the message out of our people across the world. So it's important that you share, that you like, that you download the African Diaspora News Channel app, that you support, because how many of you all know that not everybody likes what our brother is doing? So it's up to us to make sure that the message is out. It's up to us to make sure that we support. It's up to us to make sure that we share and that we tap into this platform and to support it in whatever way that you can. Yes? And make sure that you tune in tonight when he comes on at 8 p.m. Eastern. Watch this. Dr. Claude Anderson wrote many books. The name of this book is called Dirty Little Secrets. Again, I didn't even tell the team I was going to quote from this, but I'm going to quote from this. I'm going to get out of here because we got to humiliate these folks and show them up. So she's sitting up here talking about the natives. So I just told you some of the original natives were black-skinned people, right? I just approved to you in no limit of time. You all didn't even need me to tell you this. We already gave them a form of reparations. But that's not all. Guess what Dr. Claude Anderson teaches us? Everybody be sure to share this broadcast. Watch this. On page 196 of the book called Dirty Little Secrets. Y'all better get ready. Y'all hold on to your seat. I wish I could read your comments right now. I hope y'all, somebody put a car in the chat. Put your seatbelts on, family. Y'all ready for what I'm getting ready to quote to you now? We're finna put Jane Elliot and the Black Boule in their place. Let's correct the record with facts and receipts. Watch this. This section is called Indians' Unpaid Debts to Blacks. Y'all, I try not to act like this on Brother Phil's channel. On my channel at VickiDillard.tv, y'all, I'm a little extra over there. I try to calm down a little bit. I'm trying, y'all. Listen to what he says here. It says, in the early development of colonial America, Europeans included incentives to dissuade allies between blacks and Indians in every Indian treaty. Did y'all hear that? Somebody please tag Jane Elliot this and the Black Boule. Listen, culturally, politically, and economically, Indians were classified above blacks. Miss Jane Elliot, listen. Many Indians adopted the racial attitudes that blacks were inferior. Their skin color, the outward sign of their predestined status as slaves. Y'all ain't ready for this. There were major differences in the way Indians and blacks were treated. The dominant white society felt a sense of indebtedness to Indians. Jane Elliot, Miss Jane Elliot. They sensed of indebtedness to Indians and taught them they were superior to blacks. Whites respected Indian heritage. Miss Jane Elliot. Y'all listen. They respected, whites respected their heritage, their culture, and their religion. Therefore, it was acceptable for Indians to assimilate with the white race. I'm skipping. Are y'all ready for this? Y'all ain't ready. Like whites, Indians found slave trading to be extremely profitable. Vicki, calm down. Don't show out all your Mississippi. Vicki, Brother Phil's got Africans watching that speaks the King's English, the Queen's English and stuff. So you got to speak properly and make sure that your subject, noun, or verb agreement is batching. Make sure that you refer to your diacritical marks on the side of the word in the dictionary so that you pronounce it right. I think y'all might have missed that. I think Jane Elliot might have missed that. What did you say, Dr. Claude? Like whites. How many of y'all knew this? That's why they control our school books so that you don't know this. Indians found slave trading to be extremely profitable. Y'all ain't ready? By the close of the 1700s, y'all ready? All 5 so-called civilized Indian societies were slave traders and owners and fought alongside the Southern Confederacy in the Civil War to maintain slavery. Vicki, calm down. God, I wish I could look at this. I'm trying my best. I got to focus because I want to look at the chat so bad. Did y'all know that? Did you all know that in addition to some of the original natives, Aboriginal people on this side, they were black skinned? But even after time changed and the colors of those that became known as the Indians, as she says, red Indians, did you all know that? Did you all know that some of these folks that have the reservations that we gave land grants to, land resources, and we still give money to every single year based on the treaty agreements? Did you all know, watch this, that they were slave traders and they were slave owners and that they fought alongside the Southern Confederacy in the Civil War to maintain slavery? Did y'all know that? I'm not done, but I'm almost finished. The degree of slave trading and ownership among Indians varied from tribe to tribe. The Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw had the most anti-black reputations. These figures tell a part of the story. In 1824, y'all know all we do is receipts. Yes, we passionate. In 1824, there were 1,277 black slaves held among 15,560 Cherokees. On the eve of the Civil War in 1861, the situation between blacks and Indians worsened. In that year, 25,000 Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians owned more than 5,000 black slaves. Miss Jane Elliot. So you HBCU folks, some of whom I gave scholarships to, baby, it didn't matter how much little money Vicki had. I scrambled together $500 here, $500 there to give some of you all money for school. Many years ago, when I had previous businesses, almost 20 years ago, I used to do that. So I have a right to talk to some of you HBCU students because I helped some of you through school in whatever little humble way that I could. And I wasn't some super rich person. This is the stuff I want you to talk about. Listen. Listen. I hope y'all are sharing this broadcast. This is important that you share it. It's important that you talk about it because this is how they get away with saying crazy stuff, things that contradict history. And they're trying to obliterate black folks. And some of you that think that we're quote unquote victims, no, baby, you just don't know our history, baby. But I'm happy to teach you. Listen, the Chickasaw tribe offered the following explanation for supporting slavery in the Southern Confederacy during the Civil War. Y'all ready for this quote? Y'all ready for this quote? Our geographical position, our social and domestic institutions, Our feelings and sympathies all attach us to our Southern friends. As Southern people, we consider their cause our own. End quote. What was the last tribe that I just told you that made that quote? That was the Chickasaw tribe Indians. Don't y'all play with me. That ain't all. I'm almost done. I gotta go. After the Southern Confederacy and the Indians lost the Civil War, y'all ready? Neither Southern whites nor Indians wanted blacks to have their 40 acres in a mule. Can somebody please tell this white lady that y'all bring in as a lecturer, like she's some kind of authority and expert to speak on racism? Okay, that's cute. But turn around and tell us she don't want us to get reparations. Telling us, let's give the Indians reparations. Ma'am, you better go have 15, 16, 17, 30, 40, 50 seats in the back of the bus that we used to be on. Listen, that ain't all, y'all. That ain't all. Consequently, a committee of colored people of the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indian nations, look this up, family. I'm giving you receipts. It's called the Southern, what did I say? After they lost the Civil War, they didn't want us to have 40 acres in a mule. There's a committee of colored people of the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indian nations. Guess what they did? They filed a letter of protest with the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States Congress in January 1870. Don't you play with me. Don't get this Mississippi girl mixed up. The reason why your current press secretary of the United States got me blocked on her personal accounts. The reason why CNN, MSNBC folks, the Griot folks, Essence Magazine, and all these black authorities got me blocked or disrespect me or mad at me. This is why. Oh yeah, Vicki gonna scream a little bit here and there, but she ain't no dummy. Watch this. Your Indian little allies, allegedly family, filed a letter of protest to the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives of the United States Congress in January 1870. They argued that the ex-slaves of Indians, that were still being deprived of their rightful economic inheritance. In a treaty at Fort Smith, Arkansas in September 1865, the Choctaws and Chickasaws, y'all ain't ready for this. All the stuff that I just explained to you, y'all ain't ready for this next part. In a treaty at Fort Smith, Arkansas in September, what does it say? Yes, September of 1865, the Choctaws and the Chickasaws were paid $300,000 by who, y'all? The U.S. government for a district of lands west of the 98-degree longitude. The treaty provided that the United States government pay the Choctaw and Chickasaw legislatures $300,000 plus 5% interest for the land contingent upon, y'all ready? Y'all ain't ready. The land contingent upon Indians drafting laws and rules to free all their black slaves and give, quote, each black slave and their descendants 40 acres of land from each nation, end quote. Guess what happened, y'all? In addition to the 80 acres to have been given to each slave, each tribe was to give each slave $1 per capita. The treaty further stipulated that should the Indian legislatures not craft these laws for black slaves within a 2-year time period from the ratification of the treaty, the $300,000 shall cease to be held in trust for the Indians and given instead to the black ex-slaves. A contingency of ex-slaves traveled to Washington, D.C. This is why I fight for my ancestors. This is why it matters to me. A contingent of ex-slaves traveled to Washington, D.C. in the early 1870s. Put your mind back in time and imagine our ancestors doing this and complain to Congress that they never received the 80 acres of land nor the monies for both them and their spouse. More than a century later, blacks are still waiting to collect from their Indian slave masters. There's much more, but I'll stop there. I think I might have made my point. So Miss Jane Elliot, I want you to understand this as well as the black boule who called your funny looking self in. You ain't running nothing this way. Black folks are intelligent and we know exactly what we need to do in the court of law to get reparations and what language to use. We don't need you black looking folks and you black boule and you black shields, you black shucker and jivers, you enemies and you devils to your own people to preempt our efforts by sabotaging it and giving a black cloak for white folks to hide behind. My point to you is, even if you go back to claiming that Indians should get it first, I've just debunked that wild lie. And anytime you all want me to come into your colleges or university and teach this, I'm happy to do it. Because I won't even talk off the top of my head. All I'll do is bring receipts after more receipts I have over there in my cabinet. Beloved, thank you so much for listening. I want you to understand that the reason why the warfare against Black folks receiving their reparations, when we look and see that today, in modern times, we're sending literally hundreds of billions of dollars to the Ukrainians. We're sending billions of dollars over there in the Middle East. We're using billions and really trillions of dollars with a T around the world to maintain our near 1,000 number of installations that we have around the world with military bases and installations to maintain that American empire hegemony, along with her Western empires. We help the white Afghans. We help the legal immigrants and the illegal immigrants. We helped the Indians that enslaved us. We gave them land and treaties, and we made reparations efforts with them. How is it that everybody gets it but us? I'm going to break down to you there's a spiritual reason for that. Sunday, November 24th, click the link pinned below in the comment section so that you can attend my absolutely free event about exposing the occult dark energies that were used in both the Trump administration and Kamala Harris's administration. Those are the energies that are at work in the world right now. And I'm going to give you the true interpretation of the prophecy about the dry bones army rising up. You're going to love it. It's deep, it's heavy, and we got to talk about it offline. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Vicki Show right here on African Diaspora News Channel. We thank you so much for tuning in, family. Be sure to check out the commentary of my beautiful colleagues here. Don't miss it. Be sure to tune in again tonight for Brother Phil. He'll be on live tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. My name is Vicki Dillard. I can't wait to see you again.